All bones inside you called the skeletal system, giving you strength and structure so that you won't flop around. And each bone got a function, that 206 of them.
Here we are with the right femur, one of the biggest and strongest bone in our body. We are going to talk about some of the structures looking at the anterior side. Right here is the femur head. The neck on top of the head is this little dimple called the fovea capitis. So we have the head, neck, and fovea capitis. Looking at the posterior side, we have these two very large mountains of bones. This big chunk called the greater trochanter, and this one that looks like a hill, the lesser trochanter. These two are connected by a couple lines. This is why we have the blue markings. Don't worry, they are washable. On the anterior side, we have the intertrochanteric line. On the posterior side, with this actual crest, you can see it has this big ridge called the intertrochanteric crest. On the posterior side, moving further down the femoral shaft, looking at the distal end, we have two large condyles. This big, large condyle is the medial condyle, and this one is the lateral condyle. And above them is this big knobs are called the epicondyles. Medial epicondyle and lateral epicondyle, and between this gigantic intercondylar fossa. And on the anterior side, you can see this surface where the patella is going to rub, called the patellar surface. Now, let's review. Head, fovea capitis, with the neck and the greater trochanter.
Lesser trochanter with
the intertrochanteric crest on the posterior side. Intertrochanteric line on the anterior side. Large shaft, medial and lateral condyles with epicondyles on the sides. And then the intercondyle fossa with the patellar surface on the anterior side. Welcome to my channel. Here we have the mandible, the only movable bone in the skull. When talking about the structures, they can be referred as mandibular or also known as mental. Crazy, right? Taking a look at the chin, this bump is the mental protuberance. We can see these little holes called the mental foramen. We are able to see the teeth and the little border that goes from bone to teeth. It is called the alveolar margin. Then we can see this crest. That is the alveolar crest. These bumps, which are ridges, are called the alveolar processes. Moving back, we find the ramus. This flattened area is the mandibular ramus. Then we have this angle where it changes direction, called the mandibular angle. This little notch right here is the mandibular notch. And we have this mandibular condyle with the head and the neck. And this kind of process here is called the core knot process. Flipping it to the back, we have these holes next to the lingula, which are called the mandibular foramen. So this is the mandibular foramen next to the lingula. This little line is the mylohyoid line that is a little ridge that the mylohyoid will insert, and then this little tubercle named genial tubercle, also known as mental spines for the mandible. Let's review. Mental protuberance with the mental foramen, with the alveolar margins, the alveolar processes, and the alveolar crest. You can see this is the core knot process with the mandibular notch, mandibular condyle, the head and the neck, and the mandibular ramus with a mandibular angle. On the back, we got the mental spines or genial tubercle, the mylohyoid line, mandibular foramen next to the lingula. Hello again. Here we have the right foot. The big toe always faces medial and the calcaneus faces posterior. That's how we know it's the right foot. First bone here is the calcaneus, which is the heel. Over here is where our heel and our calcaneal tendon will attach. This guy right here is the talus. This little guy right over here reminds me of a boat. And 1, 2, 3 are 3 different bones on top of the boat. The boat is the navicular with these 3 bones to articulate with it. These are called the cuneiforms. 1 medial cuneiform, 2 intermediate, and 3 lateral cuneiforms. Next to it is the cube. Looks like a rock to me. It is the cuboid bone. Let's review. We have the calcaneus heel. The talus will have the navicular with 3 individual medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiforms and the cuboid bone. Taking a look at the rest of the foot, we have our 5 metatarsals. Right metatarsal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These bones here of our toes are the phalanges. Now let's review it all. So we have the phalanges, the metatarsals, the cuboid bone, medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiforms. They are on top of the navicular bone, then the talus and the calcaneus bone. Now you can ace your test. Don't forget to subscribe.